thanks everybody for joining. I know it's a bit late, but we're hoping it's a time where everybody would be available. Essentially, we are at a pivotal point in the growth of the company. We want to recruit and hire new engineers. And we thought it's a bit of different way of doing it, but perhaps instead of presenting the company where we are and what we do in the context of a job interview, why not do it in a sort of a Q&A session? So you'll see we've prepared a few slides. It's there's a few points we'd like to touch on, but it's really not meant to be a linear presentation. At any point you can stop us. We have a few people that are going to speak today. And I guess okay, maybe I'll start with that. Essentially we're gonna go through a little bit about the company, exactly what sort of product and service we offer, what we typically do for our customers, what distinguishes us from the other companies in that area, I guess, on why we need you, essentially.
Looks like we already have a hand raise, actually, Nico.
Oh, okay.
I'm seeing Adrian, you have a question?
Go for it.
Oh, sorry for the interruption.
That's all right. It's an interactive Q&A.
It is.
Okay. So are you gonna present everybody?
Yeah, we're gonna start with that.
I was exactly going
there. Sorry for that. Because I was having some issues with my microphone and the headphones. That's why I raised my hand, because I didn't listen the beginning of the meeting. Sorry.
No worries. So why don't we get started? Catherine, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. So hi, everybody. It's good to see such a great turnout. My name is Catherine Derry. I'm a senior technical project manager. I've been with MANNARINO for 5 years after spending a few years with the big OEMs like Bombardier and Mitsubishi. So mainly software system engineering, all on the project management side of things. So good to see everybody.
Thanks, Catherine. So my name is Nicolas Ulissi, and I'm a software chief at MANNARINO. I've been working here for 14, 15 years. Prior to that, I worked for developing full flight simulator for a company in Montreal.
Thanks, Nico. So I'm Mario Jacobelli, Chief Operating Officer at MANNARINO. I've been with MANNARINO since the early days. So company started in 1999, and I joined in 2003. So it's been quite a while. And before that, like some of the stories you've heard from Nico and Catherine, I also came from a very large OEM here in the Montreal area. So it's been about 30 years I've been developing safety critical systems. Much less of the development in these days, as I sort of take on some of the chief operating officer tasks. But again, always interested to hear, new people, new ideas, who want to join the company. So hopefully in that case, we'll get you all interested. And from that perspective, I'll give you some of the stories that we've had over at least I've had over the last 30 years that, can help you be interested and want to join us. So thanks. A pleasure to meet everyone. I'm sure, we'll be talking throughout the next couple of hours. So Carly, over to you.
Hi, I'm Carly. I'm a technical recruiter here. I've been here for a little bit over 2 years. It's nice to see so many faces and hoping to welcome some of you soon.
Thanks, Carly. And apologies, I'm playing a bit with PowerPoint, but right now I have to make a choice between seeing the camera and presenting. So maybe I'll organize this way for now. Yeah, so on next point, obviously if you have a question at any point, feel free to interrupt us. Mario, you want to start explaining a little bit about the company and its history?
Sure, yeah. So like I mentioned, so John MANNARINO, hence the name, that's where it comes from. He was the founder, started the company in 1999. I was working with John at that large OEM for the 7 years before joining MANNARINO. And again, it sort of inspired me to be the best engineer I could be. And then when he started his new organization, I said, hey, this might be an opportunity to continue that. And it was, it's been very, very successful as a company, very successful, technically speaking, as an engineer. and now as a senior sort of official for the company. Now there have been some changes. I mean, growth, spawns interest from other players, and one of the large services companies worldwide, their names are Scallion. So the Scallion Group actually acquired MANNARINO in June of 2024. So since then, we've been going through, a large integration phase with them, sort of getting visibility on what Scallion do. They obviously, now know what we do and what we bring and why we're so successful as an organization. And together we look to sort of bring even more success overall to the group. And hopefully you joining us at the end of this session will, propel that growth for the company and for the group as a whole. In terms of the location, we still have our main offices here in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Of course, a very, very cold evening here in Montreal. But it is one of the primary aerospace locations in the world. In fact, the third largest, behind Seattle and Toulouse. So at the end of the day, we are a hub. We do generate a lot of aerospace engineers, and there's a lot of secondary effects, and we are one of those in terms of aerospace in Quebec and in Canada and servicing the industry. Now, it's not just aerospace and defense. We do also service other industries like energy systems, gas turbine sort of engines used to develop power and generate power. We do also support rail industries, and we're looking to expand, of course, with our product, and we'll talk about that in a second, but expand into other industries like medical devices, transportation, automotive, industrial applications, and we're seeing interest from the non-traditional aerospace, and we could talk a little bit about our growth in that area a little bit later on, but that's just sort of at a 50,000 foot level. That's sort of what we are, some of the industries we service, and some of the future sort of growth that we're going to see as we embark on the next journey of the company with Scallion.
Thanks, Mario. So perhaps let's go to the next slide. So same thing if you want to continue here, but I think
sure,
go ahead.
No problem. So the company itself is really built on three pillars: engineering services, which is the largest part of the organization, and right now what's listed there is related to aircraft. So software, DO 178 is the de facto standard in industry. In fact, it's law for developing software for safety critical systems. On the hardware side, so DO 254. So again, hardware engineering, airborne electronic hardware. I think maybe there's some technical difficulties. I see Debbie just popped up saying she can't see the slides, but I'll let you guys work at that in the background and look at the comments, see but I'll keep going. And so airborne electronic hardware, DO 254, the standard associated with that. And then, if we go all the way up to the top aircraft levels, of course, sort of systems engineering, which includes safety. It's a very, very prominent word in aerospace. The use of the term safety has very, very strict connotations. Like you, I would never get on an aircraft if I knew it wasn't safe, and sort of these guidelines and principles from an engineering perspective help ensure that safety.
Kelly?
Yeah. William? Oh, there you go. He's on mute. Perfect. So I see there's some feedback. So some can't see. I'm not sure.
I'm going to try to take over and then keep you going, Mario. Hopefully this works better.
Okay. So that's the sort of engineering services that I was referring to, all the way from aircraft, system, subsystem, component level, and then all the way down to the implementation at the software and airborne electronic hardware level. And a lot of the services from an engineering perspective that we offer are entirely transferable across different industries. So that's why I was saying we're looking at expanding, and we are with Scallion's footprint within the automotive sector and within the rail sector. a lot of those engineering services are certainly going to be helpful in developing those safety critical systems, for those different applications in aerospace and defense. So the second pillar is The second pillar is called the DAO. So this is a specific delegation for aerospace from Transport Canada. It was the first in the world that we know of where a services company got delegation from a certification authority, for a given country. So in Canada, that's Transport Canada, and the aircraft, to get a full aircraft approved, for flight, there's various disciplines that each have their own delegation, from Transport Canada. Certainly, Transport Canada will do that. If you don't have your own delegation as an organization. But what's interesting from our perspective is that typically Transport Canada signs this delegation based on products that are created by the company. So, for example, in Montreal, we have Bombardier. Bombardier certainly developed various types of aircraft, and they have their own delegation office. But that delegation office is restricted to approving components and that go on Bombardier aircraft and the aircraft itself. So Bombardier can't go to Airbus and say, "Oh, I'm going to approve your aircraft." That's reserved for delegates that work for Airbus. So the interesting thing, the novel thing, an innovative thing that we created is, because we don't have products per se, aircraft or components or anything like that, we just service companies who do develop those products. Transport Canada saw the level of expertise within the company and said, working together with us, there's a need in industry. A lot of new companies who are certifying products for the first time don't know necessarily how to do it. And they see a potential support at Transport Canada by putting a delegation office within a service company like ourselves. So, and that was done in 2016, and it continues to grow. So we've got the largest pool of independent delegates, under the company. And from that perspective, we service all the major OEMs developing aircraft in Canada, and we've seen a lot of growth in this area with some of the smaller, newer participants in the market who are developing electric aircraft. So, those are certainly a very, very large growth sort of trajectory from us as they go through their own first certification and use our delegates to support that aircraft plan and that aircraft certification. So that's the DAO. Headed by our chief. Her name is Amanda Mellis, Amanda Pereira now, actually. So she's certainly available. You can see her on LinkedIn, and maybe during the next one of these, we can bring her on and give her a bit more detail on the DAO. And the last pillar is the product, so MRTOS itself. So this was an interesting product. This is our first product from a software perspective, and we had developed very similar types of products for our customers and told ourselves, maybe it's time that we enter the market, ourselves as a product owner and product developer. So this, if I make the parallel, is very similar to what you see on your computers or on your, iPhones. It is the operating system. It is the backbone from a software perspective that is used in the background. You don't see it. You don't necessarily know everything that it does, but it is a very critical piece of your computer. Imagine running your computer without Windows or without Linux or whatever operating system you choose to use. Very, very similar conceptually, but tailored for safety critical products within aerospace and defense. So if you were to develop an avionics platform for a Bombardier aircraft, what the pilot sees is just the screens and a bunch of icons, on a trajectory that the aircraft may be taking that he programmed. But behind that is a product like ours, the MRTOS, that sort of handles all the requests from the pilot, interfaces with all the hardware, makes sure useful work is being done by the hardware, monitors in the background that there's nothing going wrong with the hardware, so we can maintain that sort of safe operation of that specific component. So that's been a source of growth as well. It launched in 2020 in July. It was a virtual launch because I think you all know what was happening in 2020. So it was quite an interesting start for the product itself, and despite all the negative things that happened during that period, COVID and all that stuff, the product launch itself was quite successful and actually reached a much broader customer base and potential through a virtual launch than it might have done in a traditional sort of product launch at a given air show or something like that. So it's continuing to grow. Customers, we're servicing existing customers, but we also have new customers that are asking questions, and there's certainly a lot of needs there from a product development perspective to finalize and get the product certified, and also expand it to support different processors, new processors that are coming onto the market, and new demands that are being requested of us by customers and people developing these safety critical systems. So that's again the company in sort of detail, and of course we're looking for people in all of those areas. But from a software development perspective, you can certainly see, a home under the MRTOS product, or, from a software and systems and hardware perspective under the services branch. Doesn't mean that I want to ignore the delegates, but there's actually a select few of people nationwide that have the skills to be that. And if you're one of those on that call, yes, we'll talk, urgently, because Amanda does have needs in that area. So, okay, that's a lot of talking. I'm hoping things are coming clear and sort of how you see the organization and potentially how you could fit into it.
And I think, Mario, the link with that slide, so I don't know if we really want to go over all the details of how it went from, John Mannarino in 1999 to where we are today. But so obviously everything that Mario just said previously, that didn't happen in one day. It took more than 25 years. I think our success lately, especially since COVID, has really been because of these three different pillars, which really simplify life of companies that are newcomers in the aerospace market. Mario, I'll let you develop that, but I think in the last few years, we've been expanding a bit, especially in system and safety, but really the idea is we've been contacted by a lot of companies that wanted to develop novel products in aerospace, autonomous drones, electric taxi type of products that had a prototype flying, that were advanced in their design, but that needed help and support to finalize their design and come up with a certified product that can be used. And having those three elements work together, the operating system that can fit for a variety of applications, the DAO and all the services in system and software, that's a nice package working all together, basically.
Yeah, agreed. And like Nico says, I mean, they feed off each other. So even if we enter a new customer, because there's a service need there for certification support, for example, through the DAO, it is that sort of initial contact with the customer that then opens the doors as we start to work with them to say, okay, well, yes, delegation and services are a need, but through that we see needs in other areas, and then we try to expand within the customers. So it's very much relationship based. Even though we've been working, for over 25 years, within the company, we're still very, very much technically oriented. A large percentage of the staff, over 95% of the staff, is, technical engineering staff working to develop products for customers. And from a sales perspective, it is that good work that happens, at the lowest of levels that get recognized in terms of an expertise that then gets expanded to other mandates within that customer. So there's a lot of, from a relationship perspective, a lot put onto the engineering staff to look for opportunities while doing, good work that the customers appreciate and that they need. So yes, from a advanced air mobility perspective, they are advancing, but it has been quite a slow, path for them, because regulations themselves haven't been necessarily available, and then at the end of the day, once they are available, there are still a lot of questions, and a lot of these organizations don't have the maturity that might be required to develop these types of novel products and get them certified. So like Nico says, a lot of those customers have prototypes. They've proven conceptually that they can do the work and get an aircraft flying, but it's far from being approved and far from being safe from an aerospace and defense perspective. And that's where we come in, not just as delegates to recommend things, but more importantly as systems engineers and safety engineers to break down the existing and define the existing sort of system and architecture, and then rip it apart, for lack of better terms, to show them where it's not safe and show them how to make it safe, where redundancies need to be put in, where functionality needs to be developed. And that's the sort of value that we bring. So things can stop there and they can have their own engineering staff, do it. But more often than not, there's a new mandate that comes out of that, because obviously if the engineering staff did have the expertise to do that, they wouldn't need a service provider like ourselves, right? They would just do it themselves. But they recognize, there's a gap in that we tend to fill it, and from there build products and build things that you can be proud of as an engineer, but also be proud of from a customer's perspective, that you've helped this new organization bring their products to market. So again, a bit of a timeline of some of the more important things that happened. I think I've covered most of them. But from that perspective, it's not stopping there, right? We continue to grow, we continue to get new opportunities and bring new innovations to the market. And the next big one is going to be, the multi-core version of our real-time operating system. So aerospace is going through a bit of a shift now, as external factors like chip manufacturers are trending towards multi-core microprocessors, and of course the software has to follow, and making that safe is really the things that industry as a whole is struggling with, and that's where we think we're going to have a solution. And we need good, smart engineering staff to support that product vision that Nicola has, and sort of make it a reality. There you go, Nico. That's the timeline. Hopefully it's clear, and we can talk about it anytime.
Thank you, Mario.
Yeah, you can continue going on the employees.
Go for it.
No problem. So globally speaking, like I said, all of our headquarters is from MANNARINO perspective in Canada. Scalian headquarters are obviously in France, but they've got distribution globally. What we're showing here is the MANNARINO staff, where we're located geographically, where we have ourselves, consultants that work with us. So that's very much a global distribution across North America, South America, and Brazil, and then of course now building something more in France with Scalian, and there are people in North Africa as well that we work with. So very much centric in North America. A lot of our customer base is in the US, which sort of dictates why our employees are primarily based in Canada and the US. But just to say, there's a lot of opportunity there, and with the onset of Scalian, there's opportunity to work on programs in Europe and transfer, between organizations with MANNARINO and Scalian to sort of, get a transfer to maybe a European location or something like that. It does happen within Scalian as a whole. So that's our sort of geographic breakdown, highly concentrated in Canada, of course, in the US.
Yes, so in the next few slides, we can talk a little bit more about like the type of customers. Give you a few examples of projects. So we're working with some customers on the type of services we offer on the MRTOS. Before we go there, like because it's really kind of concludes like presentation a bit of the company history and on the high level of what we do and kind of why we do it this way. Is there any questions on that? Okay, sounds like a no. On our services offering, so we've said quite a bit already, and I think we're gonna, it's easier to communicate with the example we're gonna share. But essentially, we cover all the key specialties to design on design systems that get installed on an aircraft. So like I'm not sure how much the spec, like we see the guidelines we're seeing there with the RP 4754A or those other documents will speak to people, but I can say it was my thinking in the past too. Like I used to see the 0178 everywhere doing simulation, and it seemed like the cornerstone, the holy grail document. It is the holy grail if you want to, if the system you're building is going on a commercial aircraft as a software, as part of its design. It's not like the it's not the only element. It's clear to me now. Like there's a lot of different specialty involved, like in system engineering, and those are people that are typically very specialized in a certain type of systems. I don't know, flight control, the cockpit displays, these type of things. On like the same way that like we for the software development, we have with the 178 a document giving us objective in terms of that those are objectives we need to demonstrate are being made in order for the software to be installed on a certified aircraft. There is similar document for the other activity. So again, system engineering, is the ARP 4754A document. Like we're mentioning those because our specialties is for airborne systems. So like we are very much aware of the objective we need to make to support a certification. But behind this, it's people really thinking about our system will work on an aircraft, whether it's a flight management system, a cockpit display, an engine controller, or it's going to interact with the other systems. Is it safe? On trying to capture all this, sometimes like doing like analysis, obviously, simulation in support of designing these systems, and ultimately producing architectures document, ICDs, requirements, to drive the development of the RZR as a software. Obviously, because it's an aircraft, like there's like a key element is the safety, and because it's so important, there's a full set of knowledge and tools on objective in support of doing like all the safety work. So I'm like really going like 45,000 feet here. I'm sure if like hopefully if there's some safety engineer on the call, they are not feeling insulted by my very small description of what they do. But I get a sense that we probably have more software engineers. So I'm probably going to spend a bit more time on those topics because they are key. In my job more as a software engineer, like we're getting as an input, as a key input, system architectures document, ICD, and system requirements, which I know have been developed, following strict guidelines, and like with have been thought around safety, like Mario mentioned, redundancies, like all those aspects from the beginning, like fault tree, analyzing possible failure mode, all these type of things is factoring in the system requirements we are given. So this safety mindset has to be driven, like it's be deeply rooted in the way we develop software, but it's not like the only element. Like it's only possible because there's all this other work on top of it. But to continue with the services, obviously, to make sure everybody's done their work correctly, there is like this concept of approval and certification with audits and trying to make sure like those guidelines were met. in terms of training, that's like we MANNARINO design approval office is very recognized on the expertise of people like Amanda or the people working for her. There's not so many people in the world doing that. So that gave us some visibility. And we often have historically developed long relationship with customer, which started with training. With Amanda and her team are on John, are recognized expert on the D178, on several of these other guidelines documents. And we've been, getting in touch with customer oftentimes because we would provide training on all the certification aspects on those guidelines. It's a great way to get the conversation started. And oftentimes those people also appreciate after going through the training that they might need help in certain area, and that's where all these things play together. There's no question. Maybe Kat, if you can move to the next slide. Obviously, software development. I won't necessarily respect the order on the slides here, but if the majority of our work has been in general to develop software for systems that get installed on aircraft systems, and there's a variety of things here, going from FADEC, so that's the system that controls the engine of the aircraft, flight management systems, health and monitoring system with AMS. We've really had the chance to develop software for a wide variety of systems. As I mentioned earlier, there's a very specific guidelines like the 178, which we need to meet at various levels of criticality. It's not always the same rules and objectives that are imposed depending on how the software plays into this safety story. So there's been a lot of that. Not only as opportunity comes, there's a lot of transferable skills here. Flight simulators, power generation. Initially, when MANNARINO started, the company was doing a lot of engine controllers. There's, as you can imagine, a lot of commonalities in controlling a gas turbine on an aircraft or controlling it for power generation application. Totally the same, but there's common points there. On the rail industry too. So all that to say that we're really experienced in software, airborne safety critical software, but that also means experience in real-time software, in embedded software development, and in dealing with relatively complex regulation, and all these things are transferable to other industries. I'll conclude with hardware. So there is here again, a DO document, DO254 for everything that's complex hardware. On this, on with hardware design, which is a bit newer, but we have hired some very talented hardware engineers in the last few years, people with a lot of experience in the industry. And we've started developing and designing our own hardware for customers. We have a project right now, which is the control of a very small gas turbines for drones. And it's one of the examples we show specifically to talk about later. But it's a nice story too, because it's it's using Amertos. We've developed all the software, including some of it by using model-based development using MATLAB Simulink. On top of it, we've designed part of the hardware, part of the electronic on the controller, which is, I'm saying part because it's at a demonstration stage, so there's still some COTS elements there, but we're already working on replacing those to be in full control of the hardware. I don't know if I want to take a small pause. So that's basically at large, all the different services you offer. And on Kat, feel free to move to the next slide. I think it's connected because it's essentially saying that we don't have, not that we wouldn't like, but for various reasons, a key one being there's a lot more industries outside Canada than in Canada, but most of our customers right now are in US. Second biggest is obviously Canada, And then we've got 3 projects all around the world. But like with acquisition by Scalian, we're really getting a lot more contact with Europe, and I'm sure there's going to be some nice projects coming out of it. All right. Industries, like, okay, there's some, I think it's a nice summary of what we discussed. Majority of our work aerospace and defense, but we work with a lot of connecting industry. So the next one is like in one of these customer use cases, like we would have to sign a bunch of documentation to give you too much detail about the customer name and their product. So we've kept it intentionally. We're not mentioning the customer name here, but hopefully we give you enough details to get a sense of what we're doing. Kat, actually, like it's one of your projects. So do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, of course. And I'll make sure not to mention who it is. So so we got like it's saying on the screen there, our customer has experience with industrial sensors and no aerospace experience. They have experience in the military as well, but if you have like some experience on this, you know that it's not because something is flying on a military aircraft that it's DO 178 compliant and that it's good enough for commercial aviation. So at first they came to us just for a DO 178 training, kind to assess for themselves what the gap was and if they were able to do this by themselves. So that's how they heard about us, and that's how we made first contact. They decided to purchase the MRTOS in 2022 as well, for their aerospace sensors, and then they hired us to just develop the entire software stacks and to improve their time to market and just mitigate the development risk. In the end, they gave us what they had so far in terms of software, and on our side, with the expertise that we had, it's like, you know what, we're going to do this the right way, DO 178, with decomposing requirements from your software, getting our own software high-level requirements, low-level requirements, develop the code from start to finish. So that project is still ongoing, and we're scheduled for the end of this year, but it's been an overall great experience. It's a good example of a project where a customer approaches us with a defined scope. We manage the team internally. We have our own project manager, which in this case is myself, some design engineer, some verification engineer, and we do the whole thing from start to finish while working hand in hand with the customer. So,
and perhaps to add to that on helping the customers, like you're focused on the software, which is the majority of the work we've done for them, but between the training on the software development, like there's been even a bit of help, and I think Mario and myself were involved in on more people, but in system engineering and safety. So they wanted to retain the control of all the system on safety engineering, but in a few areas where like we like the aerospace experience was important, we've helped too. So as you can see, like there's like the work package, like where we essentially the customer delegate to us was in that case the whole aspect of developing the software, and it's not that common that you end up with a product like we really own like all the whole software stack here. Like we've developed a specific version of our OS to go on the hardware they needed, which was like very constrained, like microcontrollers. We've developed all the board supports package, the bootstrap, like the bootloader, I should say, actually, like the drivers and everything on the applicative software. It's on that system. So every single 0 and 1 that is going to be executed on that component has been developed by MANNARINO engineers.
Just to give you a sort of sense of exposure from a project perspective. So yes, like Catherine and Nico said, we did a lot of the development here, but the ultimate end use is in Europe. So this product gave us exposure and gives our engineering staff exposure to not only the end user in Europe, but also the European certification authorities, because before it can go on any aircraft, it has to be approved, like I mentioned before. So because it's being approved in Europe, we get to interface with EASA, who's the European certification authority, and at multiple levels, right? So there's the EASA representative, there's the aircraft manufacturer then there's our customer, and then there's ourselves. So that whole, trail of exposure is what someone, an engineer would see, definitely working on a project like this.
Well said.
Thanks, Mario. Okay, next one, which is an interesting one too. Like we have a lot of projects active. We just picked two that were, quite different into their scope on how we work with the customer to perhaps help support a little bit understanding, because from like my experience interviewing people, there's always a lot of questions that aspect, which makes sense. Like how is a management chain operating, and how we work when we work with customers. So that one is about drones. That's something we've started like I guess 5-6 years ago. Customer like developing a drone-based delivery system. So there's a lot of common points with other topic we've mentioned. Like it's a drone, but above all, it's a system with a lot of components that's flying. That being said, like there's a lot of extra complexity because it's a small object, so it's like it's a small aircraft, so it creates a lot of additional constraint on processing power. Like it's battery operated, so like there's like concerns about consumption that are less problematic for larger aircraft, and it has to be autonomous. On top of this, like it's a more making like a delivery of to in that case directly at people's house. It takes more than just a drone. It takes a very complex infrastructure with mechanical elements, with a lot of monitoring on in general a large and complex ground-based software to coordinate the deployment of all those drones, on charging them, on all those aspects. And it's in 6 years we went from like a call. I believe both Mario and I were in that call where like that customers wanted to start marching toward certifying like the drone itself following commercial standards, to today where like we're I think between 10 or 20% of the engineers working in this project are from MANNARINO. When I say we support like the design testing of all the key components, it doesn't mean like we own the designs of all those components, but we've got some of engineers on at some level on all the systems on the drone, on all the other system, like all the ground-based software, on all the facilities on the ground. Like we've got engineers supporting those the design, development, and verification activities. So that's why you'll see us also see there, like we've got safety engineers, system engineers, software engineers, all working for with that customers. They're developing the drone, and in a very different approach. It's a very different approach from the project Kat was mentioning earlier. In the sense, it's not a work package. Like our engineers are deeply embedded within the customer organization. But I think it's fair to say that within an organization, we are not perceived like as a placement agency, let's say. Like we really perceived as a partner with, like the involvement of MANNARINO staff goes beyond like the engineers that are working day to day on the project. Both Kat and myself have been involved with that customer at various levels, but I think all the experienced engineers at MANNARINO, Mario is also one of them, have been helping that customer in certain aspects. So we're, I think, really perceived as an organization which, yes, like, as like engineer distributed like all across the organization doing wide range of activities, but also as a single entity that's like, that can support that company into this journey of delivering this system, of continuously improving it, on meeting like it's not going to be done in one day. It's gradual, but gradually meaning more and more stringent requirements instead of demonstrating how safe their system is, on even qualifying and ultimately certifying the drone to be able to operate in a more complex environment.
To add to your point, Nico, where you say that we're not just like a placement agency, we MANNARINO people that work with that customer, we work as a team inside our own little company, helping each other, helping the client as well. So it's not as if you're just parachuted at a customer, at a client, and expected to help them on your own. Like we all work together.
Exactly.
Just to give a bit of background on the project, I mean, if you're an engineer that's looking for a challenge, I mean, this is the project. So we certainly, when it started, like Nico said, 5 years ago, we certainly didn't envision it being, this complex and grown to this level. So if you just think about making the parallels between, a package delivery system and what you see in traditional aerospace, none of that infrastructure that you sort of take for granted today in traditional aerospace existed, right? So we're certainly talking about the drone itself being autonomous. None of that exists. I don't see any autonomous aircraft flying yet, carrying people. If you talk about air traffic control, right? So certainly air traffic control has existed since aerospace, as a whole existed. Doesn't exist in this space, right? So we had to work with them, and still being developed, to actually create their own air traffic control and fleet management software. Like Nico says there, advanced cloud-based software suite. That's part of it. So, and not only do they have to sort of manage all the aircraft, you can imagine it's not just one aircraft that's going to take a package from a delivery center and bring it to someone's backyard. There's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of these flying, in your neighborhood, in your country, globally. So that's the type of vision that this customer has for using this package delivery system, and that's just in the embedded aspects, right? We've got deconfliction, right? Today, the pilot does it. A pilot sees another aircraft coming towards it. They have a predefined set of maneuvers that they're all both can execute to ensure that they deconflict themselves. Here, the aircraft has to do it on its own, right? Based on sensors and vision systems that have been embedded on this aircraft. Now we need to develop all the algorithms behind that to make sure that nothing, catastrophic happens and things stay safe. And that's obviously at the embedded, the ground station, sort of air traffic control, fleet management I talked about. But then there's the whole package, fulfillment center, if you want to call it that, right? Someone is going to make a request for a product, and company's going to decide to deliver that product through this drone. Well, how does that happen? Like, what happens from the time the person clicks something on a website that says, I want to order this, to the drone physically appearing in your backyard to drop the package off, right? So there's that whole, the planning, getting the aircraft ready. So it's akin to, from a traditional aerospace, maintenance aspect, getting the aircraft ready to be deployed for a given mission. So these are all things that didn't exist and still don't exist because the aircraft itself and the infrastructure hasn't been certified yet. So these are all sort of challenges that we're facing together with the customer, while at the same time the certification authorities deciding, what the real regulations are going to be for a product like this, for it to safely enter into the market. So again, a lot of parallels and a lot of experience that people might have in traditional aerospace that can totally be applied here, and then expand it to the next level to be, autonomous and safe, at a very large scale from the customer's perspective.
Thank you, Mario and Catherine. There's no question. I guess we could move to Emertos. So hopefully, like what we explained at the beginning, made it a bit apparent why it made sense for a company like us to get an operating system. But I'll start by saying that after many years servicing customers and developing airborne software, some system actually use like a very small real-time executive. I wouldn't call it an operating system, something very basic to schedule tasks in real time. And there's certain application for which it might be advantageous to do that. But other systems are more demanding. For those having an off-the-shelf operating system is interesting. So it made for us that had experience developing real-time executive, but also had experience on customers that made the choice to go with an operating system of using the products of those companies that have become competitors now. It put us sort of at the right spot of saying, well, we kind of have what we need in terms of knowledge to develop an operating system that would be we could sell as a product. Without going into too much detail, the objective we need to meet in order to certify a software are oftentimes at odds with something that is in other industries central to software development, which is reusability. There's a lot of objectives that are pushing us to develop software that's extremely specialized for the task at hand. So it's not as obvious as in other software industries that to develop something that's reusable. So we're at this crossroad where we had the know-how to develop an operating system, but it's also one of the key elements on any aerospace platform that can be tailored and adapted, but that can be reused across multiple projects, making it ideal for developing a product. So hence MRTOS. Plus this idea that we had been using competitor products for years. So, as anybody who use somebody else's products, over time, at least for engineers, I guess, you start to think, okay, but what if I had to do this, I will do it differently. Well, it was our time to try to do it differently. So what we have today we'll talk a bit later about where we're taking the products now. So it's definitely in a new direction, but it's a kernel that's very small and fast for those it will speak. We've been able to port that kernel from a PIC32 very small microcontroller 300 400 megahertz clock to big let's say NXP communication processors with PowerPC or ARM core, more of the applicative series in the case of ARM architectures at more than a gigahertz clock frequencies on typically less I/O, but quite complex execution units on complex processor with multiple level of cache and everything. So we've got the same kernel that we've been able to adapt to this very large variety of silicon, while retaining something that's key in our industry, which is compliance with an ARINC specification called ARINC 653, which define essentially the capabilities or the key capabilities of the OS on its interfaces to the applications that run on the OS. In a way, POSIX is quite more complex than 653, but perhaps one analogy could be POSIX, which amongst other things standardize the interface between a kernel and the applications that execute on top of it. Something that's specific though to the aerospace on baked in 653 is the concept of partitions. So essentially, as this, safety consideration are taken into the aircraft design, these different criticalities that are given to systems. I think it's for those that don't know, perhaps a good analogy is we can all imagine that the criticality in terms of the failure you could expect if there's a defect between like the flight control system on the aircraft flight control system. Well, like they're not the same. Like it doesn't mean that there is no impact, but like as you can imagine, if you have like uncommanded like flight control inputs, the risk on the impact is way bigger than like you have a partial failure of your landing lights, which can create additional like reduce your security margin basically, but that's not the impact is less immediate. So you end up ultimately with different criticality for the software too, and it's quite advantageous nowadays that you've got more computing needs in aircrafts in general, but also more capable hardware. It's quite advantageous to, on the same processor, to execute different applications at different criticality. On the example I just give, perhaps not with flight control, but with, let's say, flight management function and lighting control, being executed like together on the same computing units, it's actually quite real. Like on large airliner, like with I know more the Airbus product, like the Airbus 350, but like on large airliners like this, like you've got really that different application executing on the same hardware. And in order to do that, you need to have some sort of a guarantee from the operating system that like those applications are well like sand-gapped or protected from each other, if you will. They need to be able to interact, but never in an adverse way. It would never be possible for your landing light control to do a bad pointer deallocation, crash your flight control application, for example. So on the 653 specification mandates this concept of robust partitioning, which allows you to do exactly that. So that's some of the key attributes of like the MRTOS kernel. But it's also coming, and I want to mention, like, because I get asked this question regularly, it's been purely developed by MANNARINO engineers. Like there's like any from like the little part of assemblies that run in certain like at boot up on in certain part of the kernel to all the rest of the source code. It's been completely developed by MANNARINO engineers. It's not the case for like like the development environment here. Like we wanted to give on a, because that's what really I think drove me, but also some of I know all the key engineers that participated into the design and architecture on defining the products is like we wanted this small kernel that could meet all the most stringent certification norms for aerospace, but we wanted to make it like a pleasant experience for the developer, because like we knew very well what it meant to be developing on a 653 compliant operating system for intending at getting certification. So, again, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we've got a complete development environment with an IDE, various qualified tools that are checking some element of the configuration to make sure they are correct and so forth. And it's already used in a variety of systems. Our first customer was actually a Canadian company developing a drone autopilot. We've got it in a sensor with a project that Kat was talking about earlier. We've got it in a gas turbine control. I think I alluded to that one. I'll stop there, but it's been already used for a wide range of applications. I heard someone starting talking.
No, it's me. I was just laughing. That's fine.
Okay, thank you. That's about MRTOS, I guess, actually. So
yeah, I'll just add. I'll just add, sort of historically speaking, when the product itself, its inception and the sort of history behind that. So, I mean, this is an excellent example of when you put innovation and sort of boldness together through the what we create in terms of the MRTOS. So if you know anything about the safety critical market and the ARIC 653 compliant operating systems, you'll quickly realize that the market itself is very much dominated and controlled by two main US players. About 85% of the market right now is controlled by those two dominant players, and to as a small company at the time, having the foresight to know that there's a place in the market for a product like this, and not just us believing in it, because we knew we had the technology, we knew we had the people, to launch the product, but the fact that others in industry believe that, to the point where, and if you read a little bit about the history of MANNARINO, and I think it was in the slide we shared before, there was a very significant injection of funds from Lockheed Martin. It's about 10 million, like it's nothing to hide. It's $10 million US to kick the development of this product off. And at the time when we made the press release, it was not known that we were going to create this product. Of course, internally we knew, but we weren't ready to share that with the market. But the point is that there are people in industry that believed in that and still believe in that, and there's people at the government level, government of Canada, government of Quebec, who also still believe in that and are supporting the development of the product. So but the job, unfortunately, is not finished yet. So we certainly have to get the customers we have ultimately get their systems certified. So there's a lot of needs there to support the development of that sort of certification data that's required, the integration of that product into the end uses and ultimately on the aircraft. So, I mean, this is, again, just a good example of how, a small company has the, internal capacity, technologically speaking, but also the will and the support of highly specialized resources to come up with a new entrant into the market that, is quickly gaining market share, is quickly being recognized as, a very effective alternative to the very high priced and, very, very limited scalability and flexibility that Nico was talking about, from an end product perspective. You get what you get when you purchase from those market leaders, but you get, technically comparable, if not better, but a lot of flexibility that we bring with this product. So certainly there's a lot of needs from that project's perspective, and the funding required to take that product to the next level is there. We talked a little bit about multi-core at the beginning, so those are sort of along with completing existing certification for the existing product, it's also certainly the future of the company in terms of R&D and getting the product to the next level to compete more fiercely against some of the market leaders.
Thanks, Mario.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
I'll take that one, Nico. So how we do it, we've been talking about it since the beginning, but we do a bunch of things. So we can take a full project execution from software specification, design, verification, certification, like the project I presented to you before. That's a very good example of a project we take on from start to finish. Or we can only take on one activity of those. Sometimes our engineers, they use the tools that the customer themselves selected, or sometimes we are the ones that get to choose what's more appropriate for the task. And if you become an employee with us, that's a question that we get very often as well, who will I report to? So either a MANNARINO project manager leading a team operating outside the customer. So we own our own scope, we develop it, we report on it ourselves, and we deliver it to the customer. Sometimes we have a MANNARINO project manager leading a team of MANNARINO engineers, but integrated within the customer organization. Or sometimes you report directly to a customer project manager or a tech lead directly over there. That last part there, so our engineers, they can do pretty much of everything, and we work as a team, right? So if you're a software engineer, we're expecting that eventually you're going to understand a little bit what's going on at the system level to be able to properly decompose the system requirements into software requirements, and then do a better software engineer job at the same time. But we get that expertise internally, and everybody help each other. So that's pretty much my pitch there. Nico, you want to add something to that?
But maybe I was hearing you talking, and I was thinking perhaps we can use like what's happening now as an example, because as I think it speaks to in different ways to how we operate. Obviously, the people from MANNARINO talking here today all have some are invested into growing and hiring talented people. But we also do a lot of other things in parallel. On this idea of using this approach of what we're doing now, trying to present the company to various people, to make sure we've got more time to explain what we do and how we do it, than that's what you get in an interview. I forgot when it came on, who it came from, but from this idea popping up in a meeting to us presenting today, there was probably 15 minutes discussion on all the people you're seeing. But it's true. On all the people you're seeing now contributed to putting together the slides, and it's truly a collaborative work. I think all of us at some level influence how the slide looks or what they say. On more people, actually, other people that are not here present today, did contribute to. You could think whatever you want about the quality of the presentation or delivery. It's not the point here, but it's more to say that we're able to quite efficiently, I would say, work together, carrying out what's in the end it is kind of a small project like this, while working all the rest of our engineering and management duty on even have fun together doing it, I would say. So I think it says something about how we work. To say that we're able to go from somebody is having an idea in a meeting to us speaking, I guess I'm hoping with enthusiasm about what we do and how we do it in front of all of you. In my book, it's quite efficient.
That's nice. Yep.
Just want to say a few words about some of the words there: versatility, versatile engineers. I mean, it is one of the things that if you ultimately end up joining us, something that you need to be aware of, number one, but also you need to sort of embrace. So certainly, if you work for an OEM or something, you get to see that product, and that's pretty much it, right? One of the benefits from our perspective is that we have a large customer base, and what we do for every customer is not the same. So like Catherine was saying, for one customer, you may be doing some testing, another one some development, another one doing some integration, and not just on a FADEC or an engine control system, but it could be a flight management system, it could be a health and usage monitoring system. So there's a lot of exposure that you would get, and we try to sort of take those requests into account. So if one person is working on a given system and says, hey, you know what, that project looks pretty cool, is there any way I can join that team? We certainly try and do that without totally disrupting the team that was built. So those are some of the things that take into account, and some of the things that happen, I wouldn't say day to day, but when new customers come along, our preference is obviously to use senior engineers or project managers or leaders that we have confidence in to grow that customer, nurture that customer. So we would peel them off their existing mandate to go and build a team for a new customer, a new customer project. And that means once the project or the lead is identified, it becomes their responsibility to sort of build a team around it. And they use recruitment as obviously one of the ways to build that team, but they also look internally for staff that can support the project. And then there is the opportunity to be transferred from a given project to another one, because hey, you have a skill that project needs, and it makes a lot of sense for you to join that project. So from that perspective, it becomes very dynamic, right? You're not just going to sit at your desk and work on one project, for your entire career. you can, if that's what you prefer, and become a specialist. But that's not necessarily what the type of environment that we're trying to build, right? So we certainly embrace versatility. We're certainly want people to be exposed to as much of the disciplines as possible, right? You could be a software engineer that, goes into do some work on the systems, that touches a bunch of safety documents. So you become more knowledgeable in the entire development cycle, not just, you're a specialist in developing, a test or for a software or something like that. So again, it gives you a lot of exposure, a lot of opportunity, and sort of it's built into our key job requirements for any role that you may take on. This aspect of learning the different disciplines so you can become more versatile, more valuable as an employee, because there's a lot of tasks that can be assigned to you across multiple projects, within different industries and/or different systems. So again, it's certainly something that you need to be open to. And it's also very attractive from an employee perspective to have that possibility to move around and see different things on different projects with different project managers from that perspective too, right? Any one project manager, like Catherine may be your project manager today for a given project. Well, then when that project is done, you may be assigned to a different project manager who has a different customer. So again, it becomes very, very like I said, dynamic, and you get to see a lot of the people within the organization and a lot of the projects and a lot of customers as well. So a lot of opportunity from that perspective. But that's a lot of words around one small bullet called versatile engineers, but it really is what we're looking for.
I think we got one raised hand and one question in the Q&A. Maybe I can start by answering the question in the Q&A from Debbie. You're asking, like, how big are the teams generally? So a very boring answer, but it depends. It really depends. I will say usually, especially when we have like a team, we're developing a project internally or we're managing a team at a customer, we're trying to keep the ratio of like team lead to engineers of about like 1 to 10, 1 to 12 maybe, just to ensure that everybody has the right support that they need. But we have a team of 60, we have a team of 5. Like it really depends on the project itself, but we're trying to keep that ratio though. Go ahead, Nico.
Yeah. Well, we have a team of 2. On sometimes it varies. Yeah. Like this team of 2 is working on this gas turbine control. At times they will climb up to 3, 4 because there was more system hardware engineering involved. Like right now, it's at a stage in the project where there's only control design activities really going on, which made it like into a kind of a one-person project. But I think that's also one of the benefits for the customers is like we need to modulate our effort on the skills that are required depending on the phase of the project.
Mm-hmm. On how long the project usually take. With that drone delivery service, we've been working with them for almost 6 years now, and they have a very like iterative methodology. So as soon as we're done with something, they're already starting the next generation or the next model. So we just continue to work with them. Other projects, sometimes it can take just a few months, or it can take up to a few years as well. That's what's interesting about projects. Like I'm thinking about my past experience with big OEMs, like developing a new aircraft program. It takes almost 20 years, right? So in this case here, the projects are much shorter. So I feel that we're able to learn much faster as well. And does one engineer work on multiple projects at a given time? Usually our people are going to be working full-time on one project and then going on the next, sometimes overlapping a little bit part-time 2 projects before they go on the next one. I feel it's more the project managers that have like a lot of projects on their hands, but engineers themselves, usually it's more full-time on the same project. So I hope that answers your question. I'll continue with the Q&A and then we'll take the raise hands. Do you mostly look for software engineers, or are electrical and other also needed? Others are also needed. Let's just say it like that.
Yeah, maybe if I can add to that, like so.
Yeah.
in practice, like the need varied over time. At some point, I remember we were looking for a specific position for someone with an electrical engineer. It would be all right to say that anybody can jump, sit, and do something completely different at any time. But I think I'm a good example. I had some software development experience before joining MANNARINO, but I started as a mechanical engineer. It's not uncommon. We have people with an electrical background or even a mechanical background end up participating to software development activities. There's benefit of having people that understand other aspects of engineering participating to software design and development. Obviously, even if there is if in the cases where we see the opportunity, we see potential in a person, and we see potential for which is not always the case. There are projects where, due to their specific situation, you cannot afford to train people on them. But if we see the combination of, okay, that person has a core skill, and maybe not everything they need to work on that project, but that project could support training an engineer, we do it, and we sometimes do it with people that, let's say, have software development experience, but have never worked in embedded. We've done that. But there need to be some foundation to build on, obviously. But there is no. I don't think we stopped on what's written on the degree of that person. But within a project, in a way, we get the help of all the standards we need to follow in commercial aerospace. There's various level of, depending on the level of criticality in terms of safety assigned to the software, the goals vary slightly, but in general, there's always need to be implementation of source code following a coding standard. There's independent or not, but there's always some aspect of reviewing to make sure the software is compliant with the standard. The software is always designed by people that develop specifications that based on specification, and the verification will be done based on the specification, not the implementation. All aspects about the timing of the software or its architecture, the coupling between various components, they need to be documented and reviewed. So in a way, just following the process and standards that against which we're going to be audited by some independent party, on making sure we can present something that meets those guidelines, so therefore meets the standard of the projects. The quality kind of is built in the process and standards we use. So not to say it's easy, but it's not something we need to make a specific effort on, because we always do in a way, but there's always some really clear guidelines and directions that we need to follow. About the between project aspects, well, outside of Emertos, we don't own the software we develop for our customers. They own it. I guess as a developer, you need to be at peace with this. It's something you develop for somebody else, and ultimately you don't own the right for it. So obviously, Emertos being the exception, but that means there is no desire for us to disseminate a specific architecture that would reproduce from project to project. Look, we're human beings. Whether it's intentional or not, whatever we learn on one project in a way or one shape or another, informs the other project. But it's not we've got, a specific type of architecture that we think is better, that we try to reproduce. In fact, the very nature of being a service company means that oftentimes we have to adapt to, what the customer likes to, want us to do, but also the tools they're using, on the language they selected, on we don't always have our say in all that, we did for Emertos, which was nice. After trying so many different tools, so many language, we could pick whatever we thought was suitable for that task. But yeah, there is no desire to perpetuate or maintain a specific set of tools perhaps. So let's cross that. But architecture or anything like that between different projects.
Well, it really depends on the mandate that we get and what the customer needs is, right? But from project, I can speak of by experience for the projects I've done with MANNARINO since I've been there. It's really start to finish, or it's really from when the customer takes first contact until the product is certified. That's really the desire there.
Tristan was asking about the types of engineers, so certainly we're looking for software and hardware, but system safety, I think you touched on that, Catherine. I think best to keep in touch with our careers website, so mss.ca/careers. All the postings are there, and they're refreshed sort of daily. I think Carly has a good handle on sort of that. So there was a question about opportunities, in aerospace, but more with manufacturing and operations. So MANNARINO itself really focuses on the R&D aspects of it. So everything from conception all the way into transition to production and manufacturing. So a lot of that is sort of the boundary where we stop. But there are a lot of openings at our sort of sister company at Scallion. So they have a lot of expertise on that production side, on the sort of supplier oversight, so that type of operations management, IT, things like that. So certainly their career website is full of those, and I sort of ask people interested in that domain to sort of visit them, Scallion, careers.scallion.com, and you'll see all the openings there. There was a question from Raul about sort of preparing yourself to be a candidate. So, I mean, I'll give the example or the answer from a software perspective. Certainly, it's one of the largest needs we have, but obviously gaining knowledge on DO 178C, as Nico was talking about, the whole development life cycle, and of course brush up on your coding skills. I hate to be the bad guy, but there is going to be a coding test if you're going to go through an interview. So certainly you want to be prepared for that. In terms of experience, there's a question again from Tristan about how much experience do we look for. Really, it comes down to, like I was saying before, the project manager sort of building the team, and there's needs. We don't stock teams with people with 25 years experience. It becomes sometimes financially compromising to want to do that. So we always try and build a team, with a strong lead with that type of 25 years experience, and then bring on other intermediates, 5 years experience, and then juniors as well, because we always want a steady stream of juniors, new ideas coming through, with a willingness to be trained and learn. So there are openings for all. Some of the openings on our website, just generically speak about a software engineer. So I encourage you, even though you may consider yourself a junior or have limited experience, that apply. There might be an opening on a given project that needs sort of your skill set.
If I can just add about juniors, and in the past when we're starting to do like some software testing or stuff, like if you're fresh out of school, junior, a few years of experience, that's really good to start on and get your knowledge on. And we've bring in like a couple of juniors exactly at the same time. So it's always great when you're able to learn and ramp up at the same time as other colleagues that have pretty much the same level of experience as you. So we've had like really successful projects bringing in like new folks like that.
And there's a new question that just popped up from Sunidi. So it's more a question about hiring criteria and French, and So certainly from a hiring perspective, all the job openings have mandated skills that are required, and then there's sort of optional or good to have type skills. So I encourage to go look at that. I mean, they're very Carly's done a good job to try and give as much information on any open position as possible, so that it speaks to you and what your skills are. So if you see yourself in that job description, certainly apply. In terms of the language, I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, aerospace is primarily an English, industry. We had to standardize, whatever the globe decided on English, and that's fine. But so the need for French or the fluency in French is not 100% necessary. I mean, you saw the global picture in terms of where our employees and consultants are. So certainly someone in South America or Mexico is not going to be proficient in French, but certainly English is proficiency in English, ability to communicate in English, written and spoken is certainly a necessity. French is good, from a local perspective. A lot of our local customers have an English and a French need, but it's not. You won't be disqualified, so to speak, as a candidate just because you may not speak or be fluent in French. And in terms of the last part of the question, permanent residency or Canadian citizenship, I mean, certainly there are projects, some of the more restricted projects from a government perspective that do have that need in terms of being a permanent resident of Canada or a citizen to be able to get access to the data. It all goes towards what's called export controls. So every program that we work on, whether it's ours or our customers that we support, has an export control classification. And that really restricts or opens up the possibility of, whether you need to be a Canadian or US or other country citizen. And obviously the least restrictive, commercially speaking, the less of an issue it is, what citizenships you have. But some of the more restrictive ones, like the military secret sort of projects we work on, there is that limitation, if you want to call it that it is open to permanent residents or Canadian citizens only.
Yeah, and I don't know if maybe Carly is going to want to add to that, but I think the job description in general will say like what are the requirements, including if there's some specific for residency. But Carly, like I think the minimum is probably Canadian permanent resident, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
So I'll keep going down the questions if there's no hands raised. So there's a question about recent grads and are they hired? Certainly, yes. There is actually an internship program. What type of work do they typically do? There's no limitation, so to speak. The project manager or the technical lead decides which tasks are assigned based on the expertise and the skills that you have. So and your interest as well, right? So you would certainly be hired for a given position, let's say a verification engineer. So you would support the verification of a given product or software or hardware. And obviously you'd be hired or assigned to that project because you have the skills necessary to do it. So from that perspective, there's no limitation. Obviously, as a new grad or a recent grad, we won't be asking you to design a software architecture that's going to be compliant to all the safety regulations, that are applicable to an aircraft. But certainly you'll get exposed to it, and be assigned, tasks that will support, the ultimate architect who's putting that system architecture together, just as an example.
And maybe to add what Mario is saying, so as many of the things, like I appreciate how people want a certain level of clarity and certainty, but like many of the things we've told today, like it varies a lot, like depending on the project, the specificity of the project, where we are in terms of hiring. I do want to say that for a lot of people starting in software engineering, well, as Mario hinted about, they often work on verification, not only, but often on verification tasks. I want to say a few words because I know that for quite a few people, it's seen as a I don't know, somewhat a less complicated task. It is not. Like, it can be specifically the type of testing we're doing, where we test custom build hardware using embedded software, oftentimes with we need to demonstrate real-time properties. There's a lot of complicated I/O. Like, it's not a PC with a keyboard, a screen, and a mouse. Like, there's various analog, discrete, digital inputs and outputs. So testing is very challenging, and it's a great way to be exposed to develop too, because nowadays 98% of, if I want to risk a specific number, of our tests are automated. So actually developing tests, which is one element of the verification, probably the more labor intensive, but developing tests required writing some code. But it's also a great way to, there's also element of reviews, which is all that expose you to what more experienced designer or developer have done, allow you to criticize it and find their weaknesses. So it's a great learning experience. You might get surprised. Some people actually end up realizing they want to do a career in testing and verifying software, and it's it's by no means less innovative or challenging than designing the software.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, from a test perspective, a lot of the test environments that we work on are automated. So that means that a lot of the test execution, the actual sequence of tests and all that is actually sometimes even more complex than coding a piece of software. So there's a lot of coding that's required. So despite being, supporting a verification activity, there's a lot of software programming and development that goes into creating an automated test script that can be executed to, provide consistent and repeatable results. So a lot of the coding theories that you may have been exposed to, in your career or at school, certainly come in directly applicable to some of the verification tasks that are being done from a software perspective. So it is quite challenging, and sometimes, like I said, even more challenging than just developing the piece of software that is going to be under test. There's a question from Debbie on the onboarding process. I don't know if anyone wants to tackle that one. I certainly can, but I know you guys as PMs, you're just recently going through it, Catherine. So sure.
Yeah, I can definitely take it on. It really depends on the project, but we're trying to welcome new team members the best that we can to help them ramp up as quickly as possible. So depending on the project, I'm just trying to think, we would create a lot of training and onboarding pages and stuff for you to read when you start to just understand what's the system you're working on, what's the software, what are the specificities of the project you're working on. For one project, we also built up a sort of boot camp with an example that was very specific for verification, but it was just to help the person understand how the test environment worked. And there were a few exercises, and it's okay, try to test those requirements, and after that you should be good with the test environment to continue. For other customers, is just making sure that you have all the access that you need, because sometimes we get yeah, sometimes that's painful, but we get embedded into their own system. You get a laptop directly from the customer. Sometimes it's a MANNARINO laptop, and you get accesses to access the data and stuff. So we make sure that you have everything you need to actually do the job. And there's a lot of one-on-ones as well with your team lead or with the project manager. So we're just making sure that people have all the tools to be able to ramp up quickly, basically.
Yeah, and just before, Catherine is talking a lot about the once you've been assigned to a project and you're actually gonna, start tackling whatever tasks are being assigned to you, there is an onboarding process. So let's presume you're hired and the first day is, February 4th. So tomorrow you show up. What does that look like? Well, certainly you'll be greeted by, HR. Before that, there'll be a certain amount of digital interface with someone like Carly to sort of, welcome you and say, hey, obviously you've been hired and, things have been completed. You set your first day, you come into the office. If you're virtual, there's a virtual meeting that's set up with HR. And then we walk through, to ensure consistency across the organization. There's what we call a quality management system. So we are, ISO 9001 certified as an organization. So there's a lot of procedural, aspects that need to be considered too. So a lot of the first, couple of days is just getting to know the quality management system, sort of forms, where to get things, how to interface, make requests, things like that, to sort of get you versed in some of the things that you may need, get yourself IT, who's the contact in IT, how do I speak to them, how do I raise a ticket, things like that. And then of course, if you're going to be on site, you're provided a desk, with whatever tools you need, a PC. Obviously, everyone gets a standardized setup that has, multiple screens to allow you to work efficiently. And then whatever you need, if you're going to set up a, home office, because I think part of it is, that's interesting too, is that we don't have a mandated, come to the office or work at the office limit, right? So we talk about, and it's per project, but generally speaking, it's, 1 day a week, you pick your day, whatever works best from your schedule. All other days can be remote, unless there's a specific need from a project perspective for you to be on site. And so that's the sort of welcoming you'd get, in your first week. And then, like Catherine said, as soon as you're assigned to the project, you start with the formal ramp up on the project. And we wouldn't hire somebody without an actual need, right? So if there's a posting, it's because there's a customer need or there's an internal need. And when you get hired, you're not going to infinitely sit in this sort of learning state, right? You're going to be assigned to a project immediately following your corporate onboarding, and then obviously you'll start working on a given task. So it's quite interesting, and then there's learning opportunities. Once you're in the company, depending on what you need, everyone gets an assigned budget, so to speak, to identify areas where you want to continue, progressing, learning things. There's a process to apply for a specific training, and then if it's approved, and it typically is, you just go on and do it. So it's continuous learning, continuous sort of knowledge, not just at a practical level. There's opportunity for theoretical aspects too, if that's something that is of interest to you. Okay.
And for the folks in Montreal, we have a lunch on Wednesday. That's always good. But like Mario was saying, it's a hybrid model. We're encouraging people to come 1 day a week on site, and we provide the lunch on Wednesday. So that's always good to see people and share food.
I see there's a question about the best way to stay in contact about future internships. So that would be definitely through myself. And one of the slides to come, there'll be my information. You can always send me an email. There we go. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can send me an email. Just let me know, what you're looking for. If you have a copy of your CV, you can absolutely send it there. We often refresh our job postings. So I know this year we were looking to have our co-op program start in January. So we started looking in the fall. So keep an eye out around the fall time for our internships possibly next year. And again, there's my info. Please, by all means, screenshot it, write it down, and feel free to reach out to me after this is done, even for anything that you might not find on our website. We always keep everybody on hand, and we keep every CV we get, and whenever something comes up, we look through and we see if we can find a match. So we might not have your dream job right now. Maybe it'll open next week or next month. So we'll keep you in mind for sure.
Thanks, Carly.
I think there's...
Yeah, but perhaps before we continue with the Q&A, since Carly started, we want to go through very quickly through with Carly for the why choose Mannarino slide.
Yeah, yes. Couple back. Thank you, Catherine. So as we said, we do offer a remote work setting. Our Montreal-based employees come in the office at least once a week. Like was mentioned, we do have a lunch on Wednesdays, so that really is the day to come if you're going to come. But the office is open 5 days a week. There are people that prefer to go every day, so it is open. It is available to you whenever you want. With some of our clients, it might be necessary to go on site at times. So just kind of worth keeping in mind, but this is usually mentioned on the job when you see it on our career page. We do offer group insurance and an RSP plan. We offer a semi-flex time schedule with paid overtime. So just to keep it super simple, we operate on a 40-hour work week. Let's say 1 week you work 48 hours because a project deadline is coming up and your manager said that that was fine. You can choose to take those 8 extra hours and either have them paid as overtime on your next pay, or you can bank it in our flex time bank and you can use it for time off in the future. We do also offer performance-based bonuses as well, and we do have a fitness reimbursement program. So, even though a lot of us work from home, we still want to encourage people to get out there and get active. So definitely take advantage of that.
Thank you, Carly. I think there is a question, or could we go back to the Q&A, but just so that we don't forget. So Siva was asking about the tools, software development tool and environment. So as I mentioned earlier, again, it varies. There's a wide range of possibility between some projects where basically the customer has adopted a series of tools they used to, and they just want us to use those, to project like Emertos where we picked everything we wanted. And there's a lot of in-betweens where some choices have been made because of history or preferences by the customer, and we get to give our inputs and help select the rest of the tools. So there's all that to say that there's not a lot of commonalities on the tool between projects. That being said, to go towards how do engineers adapt, it's not like it's widely different in the sense there's a subset of language that are of programming language that are adequate for the type of software development we're doing, embedded, safety critical, and so forth. They typically dictate, compiler and linker. Most people nowadays will want some sort of integrated development environment. Because we do a lot of embedded, oftentimes debugging means some debugger probe on some sort of debug probe. For a lot of reasons, you want some version configuration control. So, I could go into testing too, but those are just a key tool for developing, doing embedded software development. On how engineer adapt, well, there is not oftentimes there is not that many choices. Nowadays, if you do version control, most likely you use Git. Some customers still use Subversion. There's still some alternative, but it is not a huge range. Even though they can differ in some of the details, the key principles staying the same. So once you've seen 2, 3, well, typically you can pick it up very quickly. Not to say that there is not sometimes some training program, we had projects lately where there was all the testing was done in Python, and the testing environment was very, many language like Python, there's a lot of levels you can operate at, and the architecture that is a test environment was and is still complex for good reasons, but it's complex. So it required people with more experience in things in language constructs that you won't use for a simple test script in Python. A lot of lambda functions. Like, not that it's like a mystery, but like we realize a number of our staff were more like, let's say, C developer. They knew a bit of Python, but perhaps not all those like more modern constructs. So we all of them went for a training class. Like, we purchased a training class online. Like, that was a comprehensive Python course, selected the elements that were adequate for the challenge we know they're going to meet on the people. Like, it's like a 4-hour class, would go through the class to get ready. So how do engineers adapt? Like, it's a blend of like what you bring from your history on similar tools you've used, what you get from your colleagues. Like, oftentimes you'll have people in the team that either have used the tool before or have started on the project before, so they have developed like a specific skill for that specific tool, on like sometime like complemented or by training classes, basically. I hope it answers your question, Siva. Okay, so
back to the Q&A.
There's a few more Q&A. Do you need to log your hours? Okay, I'll let you take that one, Kat.
Yeah. The short answer is yes. I think, yeah, Mario and Carly answered. It's really important to log your hours for own customer invoicing, or as well to make sure everybody's fair about the flex time policy and all, right? So if you do work 48 hours in a week, we want to know about it, and be sure that those 8 hours are going to be either paid to you or you can take them back in time, right?
Yeah, to your point, Kat, like it's very much linked to the what I think is a great advantage working at MANNARINO is like, you're being asked to work within core hours because, like, hey, we need to work together, so we all need to work at the same time at some point. But there's a lot of flexibility outside of those core hours.
Mm-hmm.
On this flexibility is also in how much work you work every week. Don't get me wrong. Like there are crunch time on projects where, like, we ask people, hey, maybe if you can work more a bit this week, that would help. But in general, there's a lot of flexibility. So if we don't have a robust system to keep track of what everybody is doing, like, at some point we're gonna get unfair with someone, whether it's you as an employee that's not getting paid what you work, or to a customer that get billed for work that was never done. So it's this type system is important to us because that's what's keep everything in control and balanced.
And I think I saw a question at some point, I don't remember where, if we're hiring project managers as well. It so happened that right now I don't believe we have a project manager posting on our website, but we are looking for project managers once in a while. Like Carly said, if it's not a match right now, maybe it's going to be in a week or a month from now, so you can stay informed on our open postings, but not right now for the project manager position.
All right. It sounds like I'm amazed like how disciplined we are. I think we went through all the slides, like we've had a series of questions for the last half an hour, but it seems to be drying out. Like, anybody else?
Can we share the next slide? I just want, so they have all the different links to our pages if they want to be in touch with us. This is how you can keep track of everything we have going on, including our openings. So keep an eye on all these pages. You can find us here.
There was a question about travel. I think I put a response there, but it really is dependent on customer needs. So certainly there are projects that are requiring you to travel to the customer for whatever integration testing or other meetings from a program management perspective. It's not fixed. Like, I'm not going to say, everyone's going to travel at least once per year. It really depends on customer. But if you do need to travel, I mean, we prefer sort of work-life balance. We're not going to assign someone, permanently, if they live in Montreal, for example, to go live in in New York City to support a customer, on a full-time basis. That's not something typical. If you go to travel, it's typically under a week to support a customer, and then we prefer, like I said, or at least I prefer in my old age, I suppose, to be with the family more than to be at a bar somewhere. So I try and make sure that I'm home for the weekends, and that's the expectation too, right? To try and keep that work family balance as balanced as possible.
Yeah, no. So to sum it up, like I wouldn't put an exact percent, but like we really tried. Like I won't say all of us, Carly, Kat, myself, like Mario, we're all involved in the requirement to keep an open mind. And I can, speaking for myself, like I was not always an obvious candidate when I was not an obvious candidate when I applied to MANNARINO. I've never done safety critical or embedded. So and I think we'll try to keep this openness into like and I'm sure Carly could say a lot more about that. Like finding the right people for the job is more complicated than just finding a few keywords that needs to match exactly. Like I think we stay open. It doesn't mean that like there is no some critical skills that like we think are important for a specific job that like that we would hire anybody just based on their willingness to learn, obviously. But yes, by any means, like if you feel like you're close to this to what we're asking for, but not completely there, that's why we have interviews basically to evaluate like if we want to proceed anyway on grow together.
We are flexible like that. Like we understand. People have appointments once in a while, kids to go pick up, and that's the advantage of working remotely, right? So there are some team meetings once in a while, customer meetings as well. So as long as those can be met and those hours are in, if you prefer to work in the evening, sometimes a little bit during the day, like we're pretty flexible.
Yeah, it has to be reasonable with someone. So obviously the base week is 40 hours a week. So like I won't go into the detail of a FlexBand system, but it's allow accumulating up to a certain level or being negative up to a certain level, but it's designed so that we trend on average to 40 hours a week. As Catherine said, like, if you have a doctor appointment or if anything during the day, of course, no problem. In general, we try to ask people to stay as much as possible to be working between 10:30 to, is it 9:30? I think it's 10:30 to 3:30 that we ask. Like someone correct me if I'm wrong, because like if we want to be effective, we need to be able to collaborate. It doesn't happen if people is working all over the place. So I think the only thing we ask in a way I want to say is professionalism, right? Like you're gonna be absent for a couple of hours during that day because you have a personal appointment. Well, you don't do that like ideally while there is a meeting like where you need to attend. And if it need to happen because it's plan, you make sure you let people know so that like people are not expecting you to show up and you don't. But so what I'm trying to say, I guess, is like there's a lot of flexibility, but these are all written rules, but I think in general, they're just common sense on how can we work together on building something in a company, right? Which means like talking from time to time.
And Debbie is asking a last question here for what the interview process is like. You want to take that one, Carly?
Yeah, so as it was mentioned earlier, there is a technical assignment that does take place at some point, but the main focus of the interview is really just to get to know your experience. We want to understand, what type of opportunity it is that you're looking for. So it's a very casual, we would just want to get to know you a little bit better. Then there's the technical component, and then there is a brief HR component as well with myself or my colleague towards the end, where we just ask you some, HR items, and that's typically what it's like. If you are selected to move forward, then there's usually an additional interview where you'd meet with the client, because we of course want you to have an opportunity to meet with them as well, and it would take a similar format. Any other questions? I think we're good, guys.
right on time.
Yeah.
So I guess we can close now. Thanks everybody. Carly, you want to take the final word perhaps on how to reach you for folks that are interested?
Yeah, of course. So I believe my email is on the next slide if you want to put it up again. So you can reach out to my email here. Let me know that you were at this meeting with us. Let me know if there's something particular that you're interested in, or maybe a question comes up for you later and you wish you would have asked. You can send them to me, whether it's for the team or myself. So I strongly encourage you, even if you just want to send me an email to just say hi that you were here, that's great too.